Good afternoon, and welcome to the second installment of Black Voices in Research event series. This series has been brought to you by the University of Florida Clinical and Translational Science Institute's Diversity and Cultural Competency Council. But it's also been brought to you through the efforts and frankly speaking, the talent of Taylor Williams, who is the creative director of Guts and Glory. I also have to observe that today is June 19th, and Juneteenth, as you know, 150 years ago, African Americans celebrated their emancipation from slavery. So this, in many ways, is a historic moment, and I think a really important moment to have this conversation about Black voices in research. And I think in doing so, I want to tell you a little bit about my own personal story and how I got to where I am. But to really relate to you, I think, some of the important issues in the conversations we're having today about equity and about the African American experience, especially in biomedical research. The story for me began as a young boy. Some of you may recall that in the 60s and the 70s, the Department of Education actually began to publish a series of books called the How and Why Wonder Books that focused on science. And I became enthralled and entranced by the idea of doing science at a very early age. The thing about me was that I was persistent. I was a voracious reader. In my younger days, I was fascinated by the Scientific American and Discovery magazines that focused on biomedical research, focused on the new era of DNA biology and RNA biology. I read about Craig Ventnor and his quest to sequence the human genome. A lot of these things impacted my own early years in thinking about my trajectory in science. But along the way, you have to understand that there were people who opened up opportunities and opened the doors to my success that really helped along the way. But it was not without, I would say, some of the obstacles. I remember in high school walking into a classroom with a rapid learner pre-calculus textbook and teachers being astonished, perhaps because I was not in the right class. I remember my early days in college when all of my colleagues and all of my peers were getting into science laboratories and finding their way into really special experiences. And for someone like me, I had to dig very deeply to get access to those very same experiences. I remember growing up in the DC area when it was really the high tide for really two enormous epidemics at the time. White men were dying from AIDS at astonishing rates, and Black men were being shot and killed in the scourge of murder in the Washington, D.C. area. And I recall those experiences vividly in college as I did two things. I focused my interest in learning more about clinical medicine, but I sat and persisted in front of the chair of the Department of Biochemistry, looking for a job so that I could understand and really engage in science. And those experiences, I think, changed my life in many ways. So you see, my career has not been built on biomedical research, but research has been extraordinarily important, and science has been extraordinarily important in my own career trajectory and the things I've done. And over time, I really have become not just an investigator, but a supporter and a mentor to other investigators in research in biomedical sciences. Going back to my college days, I recall being fascinated by protein chemistry and the idea of how proteins folded in the own rich environment in order to affect change and to impact biomedical reactions. I recall the work that I did with one of my mentors very early on in college, whose sole focus and purpose was to help to develop a vaccine for HIV. We still have not succeeded to date. But the journey itself was fascinating, the contributions during that period of time, and what I learned about the discipline of science was really important. But the important message here was not just what I learned about science. It was about the fact that along the way, a few, saw something in me, whether it was persistence in what I did, or whether it was a passion in pursuing something, and gave me the opportunity to participate. And that's really what was needed. Because in that milieu, we encountered so many things. Microaggressions could be looked at as people who actively close the doors. But most importantly, what I have observed over time is the sense of agnosticism, where you may not exist in this environment, where people are not looking at you as a potential future talent, where people are not necessarily looking at you as someone to invest in or someone who could pursue future contributions in medicine. And so for those few people who opened the doors for me, I recall them fondly and I thank them, because without their help and assistance, I would have not become a physician. I would not have become a chair of a department in a college of medicine at a large university. I would not have become an interim dean or an associate vice president for health affairs. Or frankly, now as I move on in my own late stages of career, becoming a dean of a historically Black institution. These were all made possible because of the people who saw something in me and thought of it in themselves to pursue the possibility that I could potentially reach my dreams. And I thank them for that. So what does this mean? And why do I say this? And why is this so important? Well, today we have a problem. That problem has been demonstrated very clearly by the pandemic that we're still in. It's been demonstrated very clearly by the episodes, not just of George Floyd, but all of those episodes before and frankly after that have occurred. That's really peered back some of the coverings, and now we have become clearly to understand the impact of inequities in society in a very broad sense. The importance of biomedical research, not just in clinical care provision, but biomedical research and diversifying the workforce and biomedical research and education, is extraordinarily important in reaching any ideal of equity. People like me, the voices you hear on the stage later on today, the stories that you are going to hear about the people who have navigated challenges and difficulty in order to reach their dreams, well, think about the fact that there are so many more individuals waiting in the wings, so many more individuals with talent who could present themselves in a manner in which they could contribute substantially to society in this very specific area of biomedical research. It is, in my mind, one of the ways to solve the equity crisis we find ourselves in this country today. My story is just one of so many who've been able to navigate these possibilities through opportunity given, through a bit of luck, through meeting some of the most amazing people at exactly the right time. Been able to jump from point to point to reach a point of where I am today, where I can now contribute not to the mentoring of individuals, but to the discovery of talent. I, for one, will not be agnostic. I, for one, will not be walking past in the hallways of this university or the next, ignoring the black faces and the faces of diversity. I will not be doing that. I will be discovering. I will be looking at talent. I'll be helping to grow talent because I want this contribution of diversity to be really meaningful to the future, not just of universities like University of Florida or Morehouse, or frankly speaking, any of the other institutions that not just want to, but need to embrace equity. I'll be one of those individuals who will be seeking out talent in the most diverse way in the future. Because I have had a story. This black face, this black man who's in front of you, didn't think he would have a chance to reach the sorts of heights and the sorts of, I think, important inflection points in career that I've been able to reach. I didn't think I had a chance, but there are those who gave me that chance. And in the very near future, and for as long as I live, I want to be that person who looks at the future me and gives them a chance to be able to make substantial contributions to society and to really fix the problem of equity in this country. So the voices you're going to hear today, they will be challenging. They will tell you difficult stories, personal stories. They'll open up your eyes to some of the obstacles that we find in community today. And I think that over time, this series will result in a greater understanding of the challenges ahead, but more importantly, will lead us to the solutions that are necessary to help to solve this problem. So listen intently. Every story is unique. Every story is different. It will bring to you, I think, a sense of awareness, but most importantly, all of us will learn from it. Thank you very much.